This episode is powered by Vantelira. We go inside scaling operations, fix the process, and build a system that keeps it running. Can I ask you to say action?
Do I do this? Action.
Yay! I love it. Hello and welcome to the Forward Deployed Operator. I am Easy and I'm here with Heather Sai. She is the VP of Go-to-Market at Centrum AI. Centrum AI is a deterministic artificial intelligence platform designed to optimize and secure global supply chains. Let me tell you, I've been the whole of my career on the other side of these tools, needing them to be available for us. So I have many questions about how it works and how it helps the supply chain. Heather, welcome.
Thank you, Easy. Wonderful to be here, and I'm excited. Let's jump into it.
Amazing. So do you want to talk a little bit, tell us who you are, where you come from, how did you end up working in a AI platform, supply chain driven? What is this?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Heather. I'm the vice president of go-to-market, which essentially is a tech term for basically anything customer facing, from marketing to business development, sales, customer success, anything along the customer journey. I am leading the challenge. So I'm very much customer facing. Previous to Centrum AI, actually the entire executive team, we've worked together now for a better part of a decade in similar startups, in artificial intelligence, in automation. So we really understand technology and implementation and what works, what doesn't, and what creates success. Previous to tech, I was actually in banking and finance. So a little bit of a pivot, but still, customer facing my entire career.
Great. It's a good journey, and I love when you said that implementation, because that's when things can get a little bit messy. So if you have the experience already, it's the way to go. So do you want to share a little bit, and we talked previously about it, so I don't want to give too much away, but I want to hear a little bit about what Centrum does and how it works, how it can help others. And you mentioned something about a Chile example back in our previous conversation, if you remember, and you can share a little bit with the audience.
Sure. So Centrum AI is a risk-informed supply chain intelligence platform. So what does that mean? We look at how we manage our supply chain from a risk-informed lens. So looking at the impact of disruptions, looking at how we better protect our supply chains, becoming more strategic in how we manage our inventory, how we look at and interact with our suppliers, all from a risk lens. So what this means in practice is, let's say in Chile, you have a tier 2 supplier located in southern Chile. There's a geopolitical event that prevents folks from getting to the manufacturing plant. You might not see this in the news. You probably wouldn't. You wouldn't hear about it in an email. But over the course of time, the impact of it is that you don't get your supplies on time. Now, there could be a delay and you'll never know about it until it hits your line. So being a little bit more prepared and knowing in advance the impact of these disruptions on your supply chain can mean that you're coming at your planning from a more strategic position versus a defensive position.
Which means you mentioned tier 2 supplier. And for those, for example, young brands that might not necessarily be there, when you go to the enterprise level, your suppliers, you define your supply chain from tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and that's how you define how important they are to the actual production and manufacturing lines. Given the experience that you've had implementing this, are all companies already there saying, yes, we know who our tier 1 supplier are, or is there a little bit of groundwork that you or the team has to do behind Centrum before even thinking of putting the app connected?
Yeah, I'm constantly surprised. There's a lot of unknowns in our supply chains, and there's various levels of visibility across the board. Some folks come to me and they're like, honestly, Heather, I have no idea even the costs that I'm incurring. Never mind what my tier 2 supplier is. That's way out of the realm of my visibility. But then you have other companies that either have a good control of it or are trying to improve their visibility levels. There's all different gradients across the board. But in order for us to understand better, we essentially connect with those disparate systems that you already have. Unlocking layers of data that your analysts may not have access to or don't have the time to process, or is unlocked in different areas that they don't have connection to, like your WMS or your CRM. All of this information, if you collate it together and harmonize it and see what's actually in a warehouse versus what's being said in your ERP, can make a total difference for understanding the more at-risk SKUs or the more at-risk suppliers and what their historical behavior has been like.
Do you think, and this is totally on prompt, I'm sorry to throw you this question. I hope somebody else asked you this before. Do you think it will have changed something in the supply chain world if Centrum AI will have existed 6 years ago when COVID was rumbling back? If I'm not mistaken, it was November, December. The news started to just pop up here and there about China and being the virus, and over there, like, do you think, how would you see if we were to, roll the play back and say Centrum AI was there and they're connected to your SAP and all of your systems? Do you think that will have changed how supply chains were impacted?
I mean, I'd like to, just say yes, we would have predicted a global pandemic, but I don't think anybody could have predicted the chaos that ensued 6 years ago. But what you can, so it's all about like your reaction to these disruptions. Before 6 years ago, there'd be a catastrophic disruption, a few times a year that would stop the lines, or chaos would ensue globally. But now it's weekly. Somebody sends out a tweet, and all of a sudden there's like an entire disruption in our networks. A canal is blocked here, or there's an earthquake there. So it's not necessarily about like knowing what type of disaster is going to happen, but being able to react and have scenarios modeled out quickly, and have a team deployed quickly to respond to these challenges.
I believe it will have changed how we all reacted to it. There was a lot of disruption because people didn't believe that it was going to really have an impact, and I believe there was a lot of missing information. If companies were not aware of their tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and where they were located and what was their lead time and all these things, definitely that's what happened, right? That's a lot of what happened. And this is why I said at the beginning on the intro, I wish I would have a tool like this before, because I've had to run these scenarios manually. There was the tariffs that recently happened, and they were announced with time, right? Considerable time. But when you're running things manually and running your Excel scenarios to figure out which markets are gonna get the impact, it delays decision and reaction time, which end up losing money for the company or risking the customer satisfaction.
Yeah, by the time you've like replanned everything, we've already moved on to the next disruption. Yes.
Whereas
like now I should be in a meeting with are the relevant stakeholders, and I should be able to say, okay, let me run a scenario plan on the spot and have an answer to you right now.
You know how many times I was asked to do that in the middle of meetings, and I will be with my 36,000 SKU a spreadsheet. I mean, yes, I can, but I will get back to you in a couple of days because
Uh-huh.
it's not like it's. And then, like I work a lot with trying to not having to do things again 100 times. So if there was a disruption and somebody asked me for a model, I would try to set up my reporting and my modeling in a way that I will have to feed it very little information the next time I have to run it. But in these cases, as you mentioned, we are getting different disruption every week, every month. It's you can't predict manually what's going to happen. So again, I'm very excited about this tool, and I want to know even more details, because how many connectors does it have already?
We're constantly adding more, so it's over 350 now. So your standard SAPs of the world, your WMS, but then there's some more niche ERPs out there that we've connected with directly for customers. There's the ability to write back to Slack and any sort of communication device.
And is that because right now Centrum AI is more enterprise level focus, right? Is there anything like, for example, for smaller brands dealing with chocolate disruptions right now? And like I have very close experience of having to buy a whole trailer of chocolate for the supply of the year because we don't know what's going to happen. Is there anything from like this smaller businesses that maybe cannot afford an enterprise solution? Is there anything that Centrum already offers, or is that something in the lookout?
No, actually, like my favorite customers to work with are sort of like that mid-market manufacturing space where they do have to be agile. They don't have 18 months to work with a Deloitte to plan through a various course of POCs. No, I like companies that just have a few people to get through, can move fast. They have a real need and a real personal desire to get these problems solved. Those are my favorites. So like that mid-size regional manufacturer, perfect.
Amazing. In your experience deploying, going to market with Centrum AI, have you found there's a lot of harmonizing of the data that has to be done prior? Is that something that your team does, or the customer has to figure it out?
We actually do that. So typically the standard process would be you have to clean your room before an AI company can come in, or else it's bad data in, bad data out. We actually wanted to solve that problem first. So whatever state your data is, you have somebody fat fingering the numbers. There's an extra zero, or there's a period versus a comma. Company names spelled incorrectly all the time. So our first step is actually harmonizing and making sense of and cleansing that data automatically. We do that with artificial intelligence. Takes less than a week to clean your master data, and then that's where the fun starts.
You mentioned master data, and I get very excited.
I too get excited about master data.
It's an unhealthy obsession with master data. I mean, it follows me, and I guess you have the same experience being in supply chain. You're talking about companies having different names. It is, I've seen it at any level. It doesn't matter if it's a 2 people company, and if it's 100,000, like 10,000 people company, you will find these duplicates, and it's SKUs the data, and it's at your level, it's with the supplier, but it also happens with product, and it's just One of my favorite
It's a
topics to
sore
tackle.
spot. Yeah. Well, it's like it kind of happened as a product on its own, because this is such a challenge in supply chain. Like literally, particularly if you're a company that goes through a lot of acquisitions, you might have 17 different instances of SAP, and each of them spell a company name differently. And then so I have 17 different instances of a company or a supplier that behaves the exact same way. Well, our AI can detect the chain of events that happens to a supplier and isolate it down to that one, and say, hey, these 17 companies, I think they're the same company, and then harmonize it, and then there you go.
I love it. I get a lot of brands reaching out, to kind of like get a quick cheat sheet of how they better themselves for success when starting to scale. And the one thing that I bring to the table is get SKUs, get vendor IDs. If you have that, you will be able to do anything. And I find, and it's interesting to hear say that you can do that analysis very quickly with AI and fix it, because I believe that's what is so life changing about having these machines so powerful to do this analysis for us. However, you still have to look and confirm, because those 17 companies, there might be one that might not necessarily be the same, and you are the kind of like the person with the authority to tell the AI that one no, the other ones yes. So in that sense, where can you share an experience of where do you see this adoption breaking? Let's say companies do go get the Centrum AI and then get the data cleanup, and then the planning team is not, or the procurement team is not using the app. Do you normally follow that as part of your business model? And have you found patterns around why this happened?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a whole lot of reasons and theories out there, why AI doesn't fail. It's a super exciting like hook for news articles. It's like 87% of AI projects fail, and it doesn't work. Everything's hallucinating. But yeah, there's some commonalities. First off is governance, data and AI governance. So having an understanding of the boundaries and the rules and how you operationalize AI within an organization is very important. Who's in charge of what? Who has access to what? And what you do with that data, and understanding the tool or the vendor that you're working with, what they do with that data. That all comes down to under the umbrella of AI governance. A lot of organizations don't quite have that yet, or they sort of wait for something to break before they put in a governance team. Obviously, I would recommend kind of thinking about that before you go into a big implementation that could make changes on your behalf. But then also expectations. So AI is not like a magic wand. It's not a panacea. It's not going to solve a failing company that has bad systems in place and make you a successful company just by implementing AI. That's not how things work, unfortunately. What it does do is it helps the folks that work in your organization work more effectively. It takes a lot of the grunt work away, so you can focus on more strategic initiatives. It's not just going to solve a bad supplier and make everything go away. So having those expectations in line with your vendor of what the tool can do and what it can't do, I think is important.
Have you found a company so far that you feel, oh, they bought Centrum AI too early for the stage they are at?
I mean, I hope not. We do work with organizations like large and small. I have even a very, very small company in Germany that I'm working with that's not super advanced in their transformation journey, and that's fine. Where we do, and this comes down to me as a person in sales, is that I have to make sure that it's a good fit for a customer, and be prepared to say no and decline a new customer if it's, if we're not going to be a great fit for them. I think that's the biggest gap, is like if I'm working with automotive manufacturers, I'm not getting moving to another side for an industry I'm not very familiar with. That's the biggest challenge.
Do you have a specific industries that you're focusing on right now?
Right now, we're quite successful in automotive, in aerospace. Commonality would be like a lot of SKUs, a lot of inventory being held in warehouses, expensive inventory. But they're also being hit by a lot of disruptions, unfortunately, for the auto sector. Tariffs are tough. Raw materials are a constant challenge. So we've done a lot of really cool things with automotive.
I asked that question with the intention of hearing you say aerospace, and I want to know, what about the electrical components companies out there? Asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend. Ooh, electrical components. I don't have a customer in electrical components, but if they have a lot of SKUs, a lot of inventory on hand, some suppliers they'd like more insights to, I'd love to talk to them.
You don't have it yet?
Yes.
Amazing. Okay, so what would you think it's true about, and we've touched a little bit here and there on that, what would you say is true about a company's data and their processes for people to trust the recommendations that the tool is making, and not only Centrum AI, any AI driven tool?
Ooh, great question. So a few checks you can have when you're, and this is like using ChatGPT on your home computer and running your personal financials, all the way down to more robust company dependent AI use cases, is having the ability to track and trace any sort of calculations that happen. We've all heard the cases like, what's 2 + 2, and ChatGPT says 18. With more robust calculations, you need something to audit that. So where did you find that information? Walk through the calculations. In Centrum, you can just hover over any sort of numbers and it'll go through the calculation for you. So, you don't get that embarrassing moment in front of your CFO where you gave them a wrong number. But also when you're using any sort of AI, hey, what's behind the model? Where is it accessing its data? If we're using agents, what are the controls around what the agent does and what it doesn't do? Constantly monitoring where it looks. Using AI is not something where I turn it on and I go and watch Real Housewives. It's a very active part of your operational model.
Have you seen the memes out there? There was, I think, a couple of months ago, there was like a whole thread of people posting videos of them like doing the dishes while Claude was working, but the computer, you could see the code next to the sink. Like, yes, the AI is working while I'm doing, but I'm like constantly just keeping an eye on it. It's the reality behind that. I have a little bit of a story on that, because just yesterday last night, I think about 45 minutes. It's embarrassing to say, because then after the 45 minutes, I was like, what was I thinking? I know what I need to do from the beginning in terms of that, know the calculation behind and know what the data, the source of the data and everything. But I was like, 8 p.m., relaxed, just having a quick checking with my AI tool, and I'm like, can you check what would be the gap between these two files specifically? I was looking at timesheets and vendors providing certain services. And it went on and on and on. And it will tell me that it found that there was a gap, that some vendors were not providing the services that they were scheduled for. And I was, oh my God, it was shocking, the analysis that it gave me. And then I start asking and poking and drilling down. And at the end, I was like, oh my God, I never told it that the list of vendors, it had certain categories that it needed to consider all of them. Because the name of the vendors were different, some of them had an M at the beginning and some of them didn't have them. It assumed that the ones with the M, it was like, I'm not going to touch them because that's not a standardized vendor. But we never agreed on it from the beginning. And that goes back to the source of your data governance, and having it all set up. Like, even to me, it happens, and like, it can happen.
Yeah, I think everybody has a story where they ask for like even a marketing material or pre-write this email, and they ship it without double checking. And I've done it. and it's just, I think it's an eventuality, but you learn, and then you double check what your AI says.
You said on our previous call, and I really appreciate that view from your side. You mentioned that the people who get the AI and the people running the business are rarely the same person. And I wanted to mention it and explore a little bit. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so you have like various key players in any sort of implementation or AI purchase, and they're not all the same, and they don't all have the same interests. So when I engage with customers, I want to understand their interests, their motivations, their behaviors, and what's important to them. Because at the end of the day, everyone's a human, and they have KPIs that they want to achieve. They have certain tolerance and certain history with AI being successful or not. So oftentimes the end user, maybe it's an analyst, maybe it is a manager, or any other type of profile, and then the buyer is going to be something completely different, and their head is on the line if this doesn't work. If the analysts, aren't using the tool that they paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for, their head's on the line. So that's their interest in making sure an implementation is successful, making sure the outcomes are correct. Whereas the analysts, they might just, want to run the numbers quickly, and they may or may not understand AI or how it can benefit for them. And then they want to go home and go back to their family. So you really have to find the incentives for each individual in that chain.
I was asked that question recently, and it's exactly that. It's finding that interest. What's their end game? What's their purpose from each side? Would you say like you have a secret sauce to close that gap, or you still some things work here and some things work over there?
I'm always learning, and always surprised. But like the most successful and the smoothest one that I went through recently, they actually had a point of contact within their organization that played a project manager role. So they're not the end user, they're not the buyer, but what they are is the connector between all of the stakeholders. They know who to go throughout the organization. And so they were my point of contact to making sure everything that I needed to do to get done was successful. They almost translated everything from their organization into how we make our implementation success. And that was hands down the easiest, smoothest way for both sides to be happy.
And that is what I call a forward deployed operator. You got it right there. I'm like, you're coming on board as our marketing person now.
And that wasn't even their title yet, not yet.
No, not yet. It's super interesting because I found my way into being that translator many times, and teaching my I've had interns all the time, and employees here and there at previous roles, and it's those people that can become the translator between what are the capabilities of the softwares out there and the tools that can implement, and they plug it in, and it is a smoothless transition for both sides, as you just mentioned. This is
Hugely valuable. Yeah,
it is
valuable.
very valuable, and in that sense, I I want to close there because it's been amazing having you. We do have a tradition on the show where there was a person before you, solutions oriented, let's say, and they left a question for the person in this seat. And the question that they have left for you is, what, tell me, what do you do with AI yourself, not Centrum, yourself, Heather,
Mhm.
beyond prompting a chat, and if you can describe it as much as you can.
Absolutely. I love this question. It's a great question. So, Centrum is what we call as an AI native company. So I literally use AI in everything I do, and not just using Centrum, but I use Claude as my go-to. I use them with my sales calls. I record, I transcribe, I analyze my performance. I do summaries, write backs, follow ups. One really cool agent that I built actually understands sales methodology from a variety of different perspectives, and then understands my methodologies for sales, and then it analyzes it and gives me feedback as a sales coach. So every time I have a meeting, I download the meeting into my sales coach, and it spits back sometimes harsh criticism of what I can do better the next time. And then it triggers a whole chain of different agents to perform on my behalf.
I love it. It's I share the love for Claude. Actually, I've named mine Claudia,
Oh, I
and
love it.
I even prompt her like that, Claudia, and she's like, "Oh, hi, easy." It's just the little touch. And then you have to leave a question for the next guest, which I won't reveal who it is, but I will tell you that it's a person that sits between the people that work with AI and the implementation of it. It's kind of in the realm of forward deployed engineers. So there's going to be a matchup between us soon. What will
Ooh.
be the question that you can leave for them?
I would love to hear, and I don't think we talk about these things now, but I would love to hear about a failure. Something like an implementation that went sideways, went all wrong from the beginning. So I would love a story.
Heather, thank you so much for that question. I am so excited to ask it to the person that's going to be on the scene, and you will understand why I get so excited about it. It's thank you so much for sharing with us today. It's been amazing to know what Centrum AI can do, and your understanding on data governance and master data, our shared love from now on.
Absolutely.
Thank
Cool.
you.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
for having
Heather.
me. I've loved it. It was a great chat, and we'll chat soon.
We'll see you next time on the Forward Deployed Operator.
Cut.
Cut. That's it for this one. Follow the show so the next episode finds you. And the newsletter goes out every Tuesday. The link is below. See you next time on the Forward Deployed Operator. Every system you fixed became someone else's win. The next one has your name on it. An 8-week live cohort. You solve a real problem inside a real company. Ship a working AI system and live with the case study, the build, and the title Forward Deployed Operator. Join the waitlist at fdoschool.com. That is fdoschool.com. Lily Bloom makes personalized wooden and acrylic keepsakes out of Montreal. It is my choice for any keepsakes that I want to give to my friends, my family, my customers. First birthday, photo boards, cake toppers, first day of school signs, anything in between, and anything you need. Every piece is thoughtfully designed and crafted with love, care, and an eye for detail, making your celebrations and your gifts even more special. Find them on Etsy as Lily Bloom Shop. That's it. LILIBLOOM space SHOP. Lily Bloom Shop.